When marveling upon Middle-earth's great cities and kingdoms amongst the realms of men, one can easily wonder how all these grand cities and their material cultures come into being. Tolkien was a philologist, not an economist, but when reading between the pages of his works, a semblance of economic life is present in its various cultures. Indeed, Tolkien devoted a considerable amount of thought to the whithertos and why-fors of everyday life in his world, a phenomenon just waiting to be explored. In this latest video in our series on the economies and societies of Middle-earth, we will explore the lives of realms in exile, that of Arnor and Gondor. When men emerged in Arda, they encountered other races, such as the Dwarfs, with whom they built an economic and symbiotic relationship. Men held them in awe and were eager to learn from them, and the Longbeards were very willing to use men for their own purposes. Thus, there grew up in those regions the economy, later characteristic of the dealings of dwarves and men. Men became the chief providers of food, as herdsmen, shepherds, and land tiller, while the dwarves exchanged for work as builders, road makers, miners, and the makers of things of craft, from useful tools to weapons and arms, and many other things of great cost and skill. Eventually, this relationship between man and dwarf, which had originated upon the exchange of goods, evolved into a military alliance to fend off the dark forces which threatened their respective homelands. An arrangement that benefited both races' war efforts against the infamous orcs. No dwarf would ever mount a horse willingly, nor did any ever harbour animals, not even dogs. But men were glad of the alliance, for they were more vulnerable to the attacks of the orcs. They dwelt largely in scattered homesteads and villages, and if they drew together into small townships, they were poorly defended, at best by dikes and wooden fences. Also, they were lightly armed, chiefly with bows, for they had little metal, and the few smiths among them had no great skill. These things the dwarves amended, in return for one great service that men could offer. They were tamers of beasts, and had learned the mastery of horses, and many were skilled and fearless riders. These would often ride far afield as scouts and keep watch on movements of their enemies. And if the orcs dared to assemble in the open for some great raid, they would gather great force of horsed archers to surround them and destroy them. The symbiotic relationship between men and dwarfs would also serve certain groups throughout the ages, though men would venture on their lonesome also. After the downfall of Numenor in SA 3319, the faithful, such as Elendil and his sons Isildur and Anarion, sailed from Port Ravenna to the shores of Middle-earth. From there they would establish two great kingdoms. Elendil and his folk landed in Lindon and spread across Eriador, founding the great cities of Fornost and Anuminis, the later of which became the capital of the Kingdom of Arnor in SA 3320. Meanwhile, Elendil's sons Isildur and Anarion landed at the mouths of Anduin and ascended the great river until they came to Pelargir. In that region, they founded the southern kingdom of Gondor and built the cities of Osgiliath, Minas Ithil, and Minas Arnor. Elendil, Isildur, and Anarion each held a palantiri, allowing them to communicate. From Numenor came extraordinary knowledge of stonework that was put to good use, erecting mighty works within Gondor, such as the Crown of Gondor, the Argonath, the great stone city of Minas Arnor. As these two great kingdoms grew, many roads were built that aided trade and development between them, such as the Great East Road and the Great West Road. The Great North-South Road was built by the Numenoreans during the Second Age, linking the kingdoms of Arnor and Gondor at the bustling port of Tharbad. Though it was still long before they had the need or sufficient men to undertake the great works of drainage and dike building that made a great port on the site where Tharbad stood in the days of the two kingdoms. Both kingdoms shared an interest in this region, and together built and maintained the Bridge of Tharbad and the long causeways that carried the road to it on either side of the Gwathlo and Mythaethel. A considerable garrison of soldiers, mariners, and engineers had been kept there until the 17th century of the Third Age. Tharbad acted as the literal bridge between the two kingdoms, and one of its most predominant centres of trade for both land and sea, bringing prosperity to both domains. However, in the centuries that followed, the relationship between both kingdoms would undergo great strain as they went through respective hardships, such as Arnor's with Angmar and Gondor's struggle with Sauron during the War of the Ring. Eventually, however, the two realms were reunited under King Elessar, ushering in the Fourth Age and restoring the interconnected and prosperous networks of commerce that had once existed between them. For the most part, the exact economic life of everyday people in the Kingdom of Arnor is shrouded in mystery, especially during its eras of strife. An exception to this rule lies in the village of Bree, where thanks to its role in the story of a quartet of fateful hobbits, we receive instances of an economic network at work within its walls. For example, when all the horses and ponies are stolen from Barliman Butterbur's stable in Bree, the hobbits and the ranger Strider ask Mr. Butterbur if he could acquire some more for them. Bill Ferny's price was 12 silver pennies, and that was indeed at least 3 times the pony's value in those parts. It proved to be a bony, underfed and dispirited animal, but it did not look like dying just yet. Mr. Butterbur paid for it himself and offered Merry another 18 pence as some compensation for the lost animals. He was an honest man, and well off as things were reckoned in Bree, but 30 silver pennies was a sore blow to him, and being cheated by Bill Ferny made it harder to bear. Thus from this we know the worth of a pony in silver pennies, and if Bree is any indication of the greater trading network of Arnor, then silver pennies must have been the standard currency of the whole kingdom. Silver pennies are shown elsewhere in Arnor, such as when Gandalf is unloading his cargo of fireworks when visiting the Shire for Bilbo's birthday. When the old man, helped by Bilbo and some dwarfs, had finished unloading, Bilbo gave a few pennies away, but not a single squib or cracker was forthcoming, to the disappointment of the onlookers. Pennies seem to be the lowest form of currency in the Arnorish economy. The silver pennies, likewise, may have been part of an even larger trade network going as far south as Gondor. The Hobbit word thani was an old word for quarter, seldom used in ordinary language, where the word for quarter was Tharentin, fourth part. In Gondor, thani was used for a silver coin, the fourth part of the castar, in Noldorin, the kanath or fourth part of the mirian. This seems to indicate the silver pennies of Arnor and Thani could be one in the same, if not equivalent. Likewise, it shows us elves had words for such currency, indicating they partook in this economy. The reasons why the two separate kingdoms of Gondor and Arnor had a similar if not shared currency was self-evident: for trade. In fact, we know of one item that was traded back and forth: pipeweed. The weed itself is not native to our parts of the world, but came northward from the lower Anduin, whither it was, I suspect, originally brought over sea by men of the Westernesse. It grows abundantly in Gondor, and there is richer and larger than in the north, where it is never found wild, and flourishes only in warm, sheltered places like Longbottom. The men of Gondor call it sweet galenus, and esteem it only for the fragrance of its flowers. From that land it must have been carried up the Greenway during the long centuries between the coming of Elendil and our own days. But even the Dunedain of Gondor allow us this credit. Hobbits put it first into pipes. While pipeweed may have originated in Numenor before being imported to Gondor, its use for smoking originated in the Shire. Thus, being so close to the lands of the hobbits, the village of Bree would be where pipeweed as a smoking commodity would spread throughout the land. Certainly it was from Bree that the art of smoking the genuine weed spread in the recent centuries among dwarves and other such folk, rangers, wizards or wanderers, as still pass to and fro through that ancient road meeting. The home and centre of the art is thus to be found in the old inn of Bree, the prancing pony that has been kept by the family of Butterbur from time beyond record. The fact that pipeweed could be spread so quickly and to so many diverse peoples is a testament to the intricate road networks built by the men of Arnor and Gondor, and this most likely meant other goods also travelled these roads. Thus far, we have focused our analysis mostly on the Kingdom of Arnor, which, sandwiched between the Blue Mountains and the Iron Hills, thrived off a bountiful trading relationship with the neighbouring Dwarves. However, this advantageous geography was not shared by Gondor, which, situated much farther south, was a degree more isolated. Let us then examine how the economy of men of Gondor differed from their Arnorian siblings. The Kingdom of Gondor was divided into regions known as fiefs, each under the rule of a lord who owed their allegiance to a king or later stewards of Gondor. At the pinnacle of Gondor's history, she held numerous fiefs, all of whom provided her with a population and a military. Men of war were not all the fiefs provided. Take, for example, the contributions of the fief of Losanach. Its upper valleys were renowned for their flowers, and below them there were great orchards, from which at the time of the War of the Ring, much of the fruit needed in Minas Tirith still came. It goes without saying Gondor required agriculture to sustain its populace, and Losanach was one of the many fiefs that provided foodstuffs. Beyond it, many other Gondorian fiefs provided different types of victuals. The hardiest of the people were engaged in fishing. Fish were abundant, and at all times one of the chief sources of food for Numenor. Indeed, fishing was a practice with a long history in the region of Gondor, predating even the arrival of the Numenoreans. They went in the course of years seeking a place for lives of their own, and at last they settled at the mouth of the Morthond. There was already a primitive harbour there of fisherfolk, but these, in fear of the Eldar, fled into the mountains. This aforementioned Morthond existed in the fief of Anflas, which appears to have been the primary fishery of the Gondorian realm. Granted, they were not the only ones. The fief of Ethir Anduin likely also dealt in the trade of fish. There was also the great port city of Pelargir, where it seems the export of seafood would continue into the Fourth Age, as we hear about the story of Salon of Pelargir during the New Shadow. We get too few real sailors these days. Fish are more profitable, but at least all know that the western coasts are not safe for the unskilled. These men were not unskilled, they were sons of fishermen, and there have been no storms off the coasts for a long time. Pelargir was the main harbour of Gondor and host to its grand navy, which regularly did battle with the realm of Umbar, whose legendary corsairs would become a menace to Gondor and its fiefs. In TA 1634, learning through spies that Minadil was at Pelargir, Angamite and Sangayanda, leaders of the corsairs of Umbar, great-grandsons of Castamir, made a raid up Anduin, slew the king, ravaged Pelargir, and escaped with great booty. Here we can see that the seaborne wealth of the Gondorians had become attractive enough that it had become subject to piracy at the hands of foreigners, not just of the corsairs, but also by the Haradrim and other forces of Sauron. Now let us take a look at Gondor's iconic multi-tiered capital, Minas Tirith. Here we can see a complex structure that must have taken intensive economic activity to build. Take for example the first level of Minas Tirith. Lampright Street, a Broadway running towards the Great Gate. In it he found the old guest house, a large building of grey weathered stone with two wings running back from the street, and in between them a narrow greensward, behind which was the many-windowed house, fronted along its whole width by a pillared porch and a flight of steps down onto the grass. Paved roads, stonework, a grand inn, and streets lit by lamplight showcase the first level of the grand city. The splendours of the guarded city only continued as one ascended into the high circles of the city, and in the light of morning they went their way towards the houses of healing, and these were fair houses, set apart for the care of those who were grievously sick, but now they were prepared for the tending of men hurt in battle or dying. Trade of all sorts could be found in Minas Tirith, proving it to be a robust and magnificent city. Perhaps a good real-world parallel would be the city of Constantinople, the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire, and the most prosperous city in Europe during the Middle Ages. Tolkien himself leaned into this parallel. Therefore, it is no coincidence that, much like the Western Roman Empire collapsed long before its Eastern counterpart in our world, the Western Kingdom of Arnor declined before the Eastern Kingdom of Gondor. We're going to talk more about the economy of Middle-earth in the coming weeks, so make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see it. Please consider liking, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. Our videos would be impossible without our kind patrons and YouTube channel members, whose ranks you can join via the links in the description to know our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our Discord, and much more. This is the Wizards and Warriors channel, and we will catch you on the next one.